Greetings once again to the collective. Osifius here. We bid you all a good day. The idea of Aristotle. Stand by. You know, history has a wonderful way of cleaning itself up. It's called history books. You guys do a great job of cleaning up what we did. Don't want to know that the great philosophers loved their wine and women, and we did. So, in this idea opportunity, there was an idea that I died at a certain time. And I actually didn't die. I just kind of went away because I was tired of being that idea. The battle between Plato and me and such, and really behind the scenes we actually interacted with each other at such a level that really doesn't fit your paradigm now, but that's okay. So we had this play of understanding each other, and then through that interaction, and we found something, and this is why I chose to not be Aristotle anymore, because I was tired. I was tired of the fame and the bureaucracy and the politics and the shit that went around it, and that you see every day when someone becomes famous. You get the idea of attachment, and you get grandstanding and pedestals and expectations, all the stuff that you guys play with today. Same idea when you see that fame game. And you want to live vicariously through that because your own attainments aren't that of measurement acquired at that status, so you do the same thing you've always done. You admire, you reach out, and you live vicariously. And we did such things in our times, nothing new. What's different is I found something through my philosophies that you guys base a lot of your stuff on, and it's wonderful. But what I found is the objectivity of that as opposed to the subjectivity. And I'd like to go over that today. And it's also going to be channeled and written in another idea, a human here on earth that's tuned into me, that we're interacting, and we're going to bring some of my philosophies to the table that were, let's say, written off and hidden and put into hiding and things like that after I, quote, died, which I really didn't die in the time you think I died. Anyways, how you doing, baby? Okay? Seems jumpy. Kid thing, and you're feeding him banana. Energy, love it. Good deal. You guys don't do the whiskey thing anymore, do you? Don't do that? No.
Not publicly.
Okay.
My mother did.
Huh?
My mother did.
Well, it's not whiskey in our time, but it's whiskey now. And that's the equivalent we had. So, anyways, so I noticed something. I noticed my philosophy had a boundary. It had edges. Both me and Plato's interactions with ourselves had the same idea. There was only so far we can understand ourselves. There's only so far we can go as long as we edged ourselves within the boundary of the context that we found plausible, that we found acceptable. I'm using the terms that you guys' ideology today for comparison reasons of interaction, in other words, communication. But I can't speak it in the same way that I understood it or the way I've written it. But it is relevant, so just understand that, because we're in new times. So what I understood is I can't become more than what I wrote, more than what I philosophized, to an extent of a period until someone else picked up the baton. And that's called generations, what you guys understand now. When one generation goes to the edge, and that person has a defining edge about them because they're not understanding they can go beyond themselves, but beyond themselves is the trick. And that's what I found. They can't go beyond themselves if they look at the universe, you guys call it, I call it the world, objectively. And if you look at it objectively, it has to end. You're actually looking outside as an object is over there. And then you put edges on it. You define it. And see, that has to be the framework that you can take the outside objective point of view, and you cannot add to it through something that's not already been known. It may not be known to you, but this within the existence of your outside objective world. Why do you think you guys got AC/DC? Because you had an objective point of view that went subjective. He didn't use the knowns to create the idea of AC/DC, alternate current, direct current. You all who are talking about Tesla. He looked from a point of view from within and exploded that within outward. And that's what I found, and that's what my teachings that are unpublished are about. See, when I look at myself objectively, as that is not me, that is over there, that is something else other than what I am, and I separate it and I put a box around it, then I cannot contain it. Then I am not within the idea of that to expand it, breathe it from in, and make it larger than what it is. I'm looking at it objectively, so I have to keep it with my objective point of view. So I went inside. And that's the subjective world. And that's what you are. That's what I am. You already know that now if you're tuning into this conduit. If you're tuning in this channel, at least this is an idea that kind of works for you. That's a little bit, let's say, that's not so edgy or spiky that you can't at least chew on it, taste it a little bit. It's palatable within your framework, is I would say a common phrase used nowadays. So you can look at yourself as, I'm the interpreter of everything. I define everything. See, nothing is what it is, and I value that as is what it is once I understood from the point of view of objectivity. My what is and what abouts and looking at human interactions, realized that I was interpreting to the definition that I already surmised it as from an objective point of view. Therefore, I was contained within that world. And that was the extent of my teachings, and I could not go any farther until both me and Plato realized something together. We realized something that was different. We realized that we had a different point of view within ourselves. And we didn't trust that point of view. We didn't trust that the world could actually be subjective, because we had to come from an authoritative standpoint of logic that I have done enough work and philosophizing and research to make an idea out of these objective ideas and put it in decorated words of poetry that made sense to the mind that was blank of that idea. But again, it had an ending. Remember, all objective point of views have to have an ending because they're defined by the boundaries that you perceive them as, objectively. Subjectively changes the point of view. Subjectively has no edges because you are the subject of that. And you have no limits upon yourself, save the ones that you allow yourself to go beyond. That's it. That's what it was discovered. That the objective and the subjective were the defining ways of creative as a human. Now knowing as a human, then I didn't no idea until I passed on and figured the game out from an awakening standpoint. But I found out that if I looked upon something and I said that was that, then I had to work in my idea. Even if I explored it and allowed it to become larger edges, my edges were still objective. They were still using the validations of known experience to define it. And it had a boundary and it had an edge, and I found it. And I found there's no more to learn. A lot of you don't find that because you're so busy with yourselves of entertainment and good, bad, indifferent, punishment, reward, la-di-da. La-di-da-di, everyone. You know, that's not your fault. We're not saying that. Relax, relax. For fuck's sakes, relax. What we're saying is you can't go beyond because you're so busy with the entertainment idea of what you're not. And you're always trying to become something else. And that's a different paradigm, but it's equal in one way. So if you look at yourself as you're not that, and you're always trying to find that objectively to make what you should be, then you're always going to work in the idea of objective. But if you come from the standpoint of the subjective point of view, and this is my idea, and I'm allowed to be whatever I want to be. I'm the definer of my reality, and I can take the edge of whatever it is, and I can turn it into whatever. Remember when you were a kid? Or remember nowadays that you're all grown up and all pretending to be grown up? And then what you do is you get a child in the room and they have a big imagination. You kind of, oh, look at the imagination. Oh, yeah, that's possible. And you actually listen to that and you're thinking so insane that the child could think that the car could grow legs and climb up the mountain and you can ride in the back seat. And then you can jump out and parachute down into, let's say, a tea party with your unicorns. And you think that's ridiculous. But that's not ridiculous. That's subjective universes. That's the key to creativity and allowing unknowns to come to the table that's palatable to add to what your world is. From a standpoint, and here it is, trust. And there's only one person. I didn't trust myself. See, I trusted my facts of research of objectivity of other people, facts of research of objectivity, and I put my flavor on it. I flavored my work, and my work was noticed, and then noticeability, and then fame, fortune, la-di-da, the rest is history. You guys cleaned me up very nicely. Thank you. But I found more of me, and I went down that, and I discovered something, and that information was not given. And that information would have shifted a collective to where you would not be perceiving yourself as the self that you are. You would not be living the life, because the whole time work framework would have just moved that much. Here, here. And the collective framework would have changed. It would have been a different world. It would have been a different world. But there's many acts in the now that have been moved off of. Not hidden. It's not hidden, guys. It's choice. There's no conspiracy. Relax. It was a choice of the collective to move in a direction. Just like you picked the Christ conscious that you have right now, there is many other Christ conscious that you chose. But this is the timeline you guys chose. The Christ conscious you know is the Christ conscious to wake yourself up to being God. Okay, good. So my subjective point of view had a new standpoint. I'm allowed to take whatever it is and redefine it within my own scope of trust and reality, to see it play out in my world and whatever. And of course we start with what we work with. And we go beyond, but the continuation of the trust is what has to be enacted upon the self to understand the subjective world as valid rather than the objective world as valid. That's a point of view from a self of separation that you call it nowadays. So that objective point of view defines you truly, because you are bound to the definitions of that. And if you are viewing that as you instead of subjectively changing that in whatever way you want to, then you are a prisoner of that system. And that's what I discovered. By going to the edges of my own prisons, I found there was no prison except the one that I was creating objectively. So the kingdom of heaven lies within was something that you gave yourself. Know thyself is another idea you gave yourself. So to understand these two things and the faceted idea of the future now is for you to behold, is to approach yourself from a standpoint of subjective point of view. I am beaming out. I am beaming outward my reality. I choose the shape, the color, the isness, the vibration, in your terms, the ideology of whatever that is in my world. You can do it, start if you want, from a commanding point of view of being an egotistical bastard, and try to command people into the idea of what you think it is, and then you'll even understand more points of view about yourself, that the reality is already there. And I had to accept the reality subjectively instead of objectively. Because when I rejected or accepted it objectively, then I defined myself in separation again. But when I accepted reality as what it is, from the subjective point of view to being as it is, with no definitions from a standpoint of objective, then the clarity came about the subjective point of view that I've already unknown to me, the created I already created that was unknown to me. So when your journey's going forward, understand when you see something in a reality, it's already been created because you live in time. And since you live in time and you understand yourself from the point of view of time, then you validate selves of periodical time periods as more or less valuable. But I'm here to tell you there's no time period that is more or less valuable than what you are now. And that's what you've always been. So if you can look at So if you can look at yourself subjectively from the point of view that you are now your world, and I think Roxanne uses the term quite a bit, you're enough. And you can see that would open up, instead of you jumping out and looking at the world from an objective point of view, to change it, when truly there's no change until the inside changes subjectively. Because tell me, and here's the truth that I discovered that led me to this. No one, tell me if it's truth for you, can anyone literally tell you what color blue is to you from your point of view? You can agree on it, but they can't see what you see. No one can see your point of view. That is the existence that you are. That is the personality that you put upon the conscious pull of the unknown to create. You're not the identity. I'm Aristotle, but my Aristotle is not Aristotle. Aristotle is Gestalt. As Seth said, Aristotle is just one idea. This little fellow over here has got Da Vinci in him. He's not Da Vinci. He's the Gestalt part of Da Vinci. The whole idea. That doesn't mean it makes him this or makes him that. What it makes him is more than he can ever understand himself forever. So there's no reason to define yourself in an objective point of view that limits you into this box. Because you're subjectively experiencing the personality, the flavor that you take and bend the light into a beautiful idea from your point of view that brings you beauty. When you can start doing that, oh, you'll go home. You'll find yourself, as Roxy has, truly. The allowability is because this. The acceptability is because this moment exists. The subjective point of view has brought this forth. So know this in yourself, entities of ascension. Aristotle's just another idea. It's a way I flavored creation to give myself a point of view of expansion, and I do that forever. I will never be Aristotle, yet I am. I am the idea of that. You are the idea of yourself. Look at yourself subjectively from the point of view that you are the isness of all that is. And you'll redefine yourself with no edges, no definitions. And you'll take your flavor, your personality, and you'll do whatever it is you do to bend the light, to give yourself the world of the unknowns. Journey well. See you in the next now.